Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator news and updates, and we have some awesome information today, you guys, as the 777 release date has been announced, as well as other multiple aircraft that have been announced and coming to the simulator, and some that are right around the corner. Stick around, you guys. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides from Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future releases that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below.
Overkill simulations, watch us as we fly. Overkill simulations, a thrill will never die in the heart.
All right, guys, so first up, let's start talking about the most anticipated Boeing aircraft to the simulator yet, and that is the Boeing 777. The Boeing 777 from PMDG will be released on Tuesday, June the 25th. That's the day after the Flight Sim Expo in Las Vegas, and there is some absolutely amazing information in regard to this aircraft. Now, for those of you who may not have purchased any previous PMDG aircraft, the one thing that you can expect from PMDG is that all of your operations, procedures, and overall flight performance of the aircraft are going to be highly realistic, very, very high fidelity. PMDG is known for their very detailed aircraft. Now, those details don't just limit themselves to procedures and operations, but also to the overall texturing and development of the aircraft itself. So now let's start talking about, obviously, the big question, pricing. Pricing has not yet been announced. However, one of the really cool things about it is that we can expect it to be very similar to the other PMDG line of aircraft that have been released from Microsoft Flight Simulator thus far. So my guess would be somewhere between 60 and 80 US dollars, depending on, what they actually decide. But I think that's a pretty fair estimate based on the aircraft. The nice thing about the 777, it is a long-haul aircraft, so you're going to be able to do much larger flights than, say, that in the 737. Now, me personally, I still would probably keep my flights pretty slow, just simply because of the fact that, simply because of the fact that, once you get up to cruise, I find myself getting bored and finding new ways to break my simulator. But the fact that it's a large wide-body aircraft is going to be a ton of fun to fly, and it's going to make a huge difference. Now, a couple of announcements. The Flight Sim Factory, who I showcased their 737 Pro Throttle Series set just the other day, has also a 777 set that I will be reviewing on the aircraft as well. So we can already expect add-ons for hardware to be coming down the line as well for this aircraft in the coming days. Now, speaking to some options that we have here on the channel, I have been given early access to the PMDG 777, you guys. So you guys, we will be able to see my video as well as other videos. I have no problem telling you guys we are locked down until the 21st. So as of the 21st, we will be able to start showcasing the aircraft. And I really like the reason. I wanted to point out why PMDG did that, because I think it makes a really valid point, especially given the fact that I'm one who tends to do this. I am someone who doesn't usually shy away from first impression videos, meaning from the moment you sit in the cockpit to figuring your way around it. I like to showcase that kind of stuff because I feel like it gives a better first user experience. With general aviation aircrafts and even like turboprops, things like that, that normally works out okay. Now, there are plenty of viewers like yourselves who may agree or disagree with that particular philosophy. Some want to see it from a professional standpoint. Some others want to see it from, like I was saying, what am I going to expect, or what should I expect when I first sit in this aircraft? PMDG is giving us early access to the aircraft so that way we have time to learn it and learn it properly prior to showing it. So when you guys see my video on the PMDG 777, it will be from a familiar standpoint of the aircraft, so we should be able to zip through it. I am already working on a guide for this aircraft. That is what has been holding up some of the what did I say? The Black Square Duke guide was the 777 was coming right around the corner as well. So I've been sort of simultaneously putting that one on the burner as well, and so that's been holding up some of the delay there with the Duke. So I do intend to have a guide release for this aircraft the day it releases on my Patreon site. If you guys want to support that project, please consider joining me on Patreon. It certainly helps me out a lot. Now let's take a look at some of the textures that we can expect from this aircraft. Getting into the flight deck here, you guys can see living up to the PMDG name. It's got that brownish color that you find also with the 747 that Boeing is definitely very known for. But these look absolutely phenomenal. You can see all the detail and the work that has been done. Now, one of the things that I do wish that we would see more with the PMDG line of aircraft, but I don't know that any of them really do, is I wish they would show more wear and tear on their aircraft. That one I will say. These aircraft always look like they're fresh off the line, but for some people that's exactly what they want, is to make it feel like they just purchased the aircraft. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's certainly what you're going to get from PMDG. But their detail and attention to detail, I should say, is always very, very on par. They always make sure to hit every button, switch, nook, cranny, slider, window latch, whatever it may be, to really model the aircraft up to spec. Now, one of the things that tends to get a little bit of controversy that PMDG is also known for when it comes to the cabin and the flight deck is their perspective of size. Meaning that, for example, if you are a virtual reality flyer, you're actually going to enjoy this even more because it's going to very much so be scaled to what you would expect to see in the real aircraft. Now, 2D flyers tend to have, where some of that controversy tends to come into play, is some people feel like that's actually a disadvantage for flight simulation because you find yourself having to have 219 camera views in order to get to what you want. So, curious, what do you guys thought about that? Should aircraft be scaled to the simulator or scaled to real life? But as you guys can see, again, going back to the textures and the quality of the textures, they look absolutely fantastic. Let's take a look at the cabin. We have a couple of shots that were provided here by PMDG. You guys can see it is a fully detailed, fully modeled cabin that will allow us to walk around it with the cameras and set your custom camera views. Given that this, again, is such a large aircraft, this is going to be a very fun one for like wing views because that wing is so freaking large. So this is going to be a really, really cool one, and I think it's going to make for a lot of really fun cinematic shots. Now, especially with the development, and again, another controversial program would be GSX Pro, but with GSX's recent release of passenger walk-on edition, boarding and deboarding, once the PMDG 777 is added to their list of lineup there, again, that could make for a pretty cool immersive experience, especially during your startup procedures. You know, if you wanted to bounce around and create some cinematic shots, that would be kind of a fun way to do that. But here, so first we saw first class. Now we're seeing the what I would only assume as economy. I personally have never been on a 777. I would love to be on a 777, but I am just not cool enough kid to actually get to fly on one. I bet the takeoff on that thing is absolutely ridiculous. I bet it just shoves you right into the seat. But anyway, again, fully detailed, fully modeled. You're going to be able to walk around it as you choose and be able to have a lot of fun with your different camera perspectives. Let's go to the exterior. Meeting up again, as we just got done talking about, with their attention to detail. You guys can see the loading and offloading of cargo and the different features that come with it as far as doors operations. Now these, again, nothing to be too ecstatic about given the fact it follows, again, perfectly in line with the PMDG lineup of aircraft. They all have these kind of features, but nonetheless, look at the size of that freaking engine. I will never get over how big the engine on the 777s are. Like, holy crap. Pardon my French. But that is a lot of engine right there. It really is. But anyway, again, you guys can see the detail and the fine work that was put into it. If you look at the engine cowling, you can see every single individual rivet has been placed in there. Now, if you're someone who doesn't really pay attention to that, then this may be kind of a blah topic for you, but I am someone who definitely pays attention to that because it shows the dedication to the modeling of the aircraft. And usually when you see this kind of modeling, you see the same kind of attention to detail in its performance. Again, PMDG has a history. Personally, I love every aircraft they've ever put out. So anyways, wrapping up here. So again, June 21st, this coming Friday, all of us streamers, content creators will have the green light to release content on this aircraft. The idea behind the delay is to make sure that we are familiar with the aircraft to provide a very accurate depiction of what you can expect when you purchase. This kind of modeling definitely makes sense when you're talking about the price point of PMDG aircraft, as if you're going to spend that kind of money, you want to know what you're getting. So I do support them in what they're going for with that and why they wanted us to learn the aircraft prior to showcasing any kind of features or performance of the aircraft. So that happens on June 21st. June the 25th, the aircraft goes live and is available for everybody to purchase. That's going to be the day after the Flight Sim Expo, which I really hope to see all of you guys there. I will be arriving Friday the 21st. Don't worry, my video will be launched on the 777 before I leave. And I'm also going to be on a panel on Friday the 21st as the seminars go live at the Flight Sim Expo to showcase some of the new products. I will be one of the commentators, so hopefully get to catch you guys there. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. Skyward Simulations, coming right around the corner after their DA50 release, has announced a new aircraft that they are creating for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that is the Citation 680. To me, it looks very, very similar to that of the Cessna Citation Longitude. Obviously going to have very similar performance, but it's another 12-seat passenger aircraft with 2 crew, and definitely going to be very, very welcomed to the simulator. I really enjoy these types of aircraft. The Cessna Citation Longitude is actually one of my favorite aircraft that still exists in Microsoft Flight Simulator. The Longitude, personally, for me, I think my favorite thing about it is its climb performance. It absolutely rockets to the sky. The really cool thing about the private jets is you actually fly higher than most of the other commercial airliners, usually finding yourself in the area of about 40 to 41,000 feet, depending on the limitations of the aircraft, of course. So, Skyward Simulations bringing the 680 to the simulator is going to be a very welcome addition. It's been a while since we've had a new private jet launched in the simulator, so this one definitely has my attention. We don't have any other information on this aircraft as of yet, any kind of price point, release date, anything like that. But for those of you who don't know, Skyward Simulations did an absolutely amazing job with their DA50. Very, very well done aircraft. So if the 680 follows in line with their DA50, we can expect a very awesome aircraft. Like I said, I think my biggest thing is we need more private jets in the aircraft. I like these types of jets. They're a lot more fun to fly. And I think it's because you get the combination between general aviation and commercial aviation. You sort of get that nice balance between the two. Being able to fly in some of the smaller, more regional airports while maintaining the speed, performance, the climb altitudes, things like that, that you would see in a commercial airliner. So stay tuned for more information on Skyward Simulation Cessna 680. Big radials stepping into a different department of aviation that I have seen them release as of yet. Keeping in line with the private jet releases, we have them teasing the Lockheed JetStar. This is the only image we have of the aircraft, but again, as you guys can see, this is going to be a bit of an older aircraft if memory serves. I was sort of doing some research. It seems like it was very popular back in the 1970s. But this is the only shot that we have of the aircraft. Of Big Radials has very much so leaked, if you will, leaked, it was intentional, that they are developing a private jet. This is a very interesting looking aircraft, and I highly recommend it. If you guys haven't checked it out, go to Google and look up the Lockheed JetStar. Its 4-engine pusher configuration it's just a goofy looking plane. I mean, it's just absolutely goofy. Like, look at these. I mean, I think, if I remember correctly, these are, If I remember correctly, these are just fuel tanks, if I'm not mistaken. But just an absolutely interesting looking plane. It's going to be much more in line with the type of aircraft I like to fly, unless they're modernizing it, it's going to be an almost strictly analog aircraft. So you're going to have all of your old steam gauges and things like that, which I personally prefer because I feel like it's a busier experience in the cockpit rather than having everything on the glass displays. And honestly, it's a lot better on the frame rates usually. There are exceptions to that, but usually the steam gauges are significantly better on frame rates as well. So you get the better performance, which makes VR a lot more fun as well because you have a little bit more overhead with the analog cockpits. But anyway, that's really all the information that we have on it now, but it's really cool to see Big Radials. For those of you who don't know, Big Radials usually sticks to like more of the Warbird aircraft or Warbird era aircraft. So back things all the way back from the 1970s all the way back into World War II. So it's going to be really interesting to see them step into the jet configuration, much less private jets. And I will definitely be picking this up. Now you guys can see this one here shows also the United States of America. Now, one last little tidbit on this aircraft, like I said, definitely do some Googling on this aircraft. You guys will trip out. It's a tiny aircraft, and yet it looks really fatty. But it says, if you guys can see that, it says United States of America. Now, what I haven't determined is whether or not this was actually a presidential aircraft or just used to flying VIPs in the United States, such as, heads of state, Congress, etc., or if it was actually a presidential traveling aircraft. From my understanding, I didn't think that anything other than, I believe it was the 707 and the 747, I thought were the only ones that were ever deemed as Air Force One. Now, as you guys know, any aircraft, because it could be a Cessna 172, if it's holding the President of the United States, it is deemed Air Force One. But I'm referring to specifically designed aircraft when I say I don't know if this was ever considered Air Force One. But anyways, as always, guys, stay tuned. We'll see what comes next. A2A Simulations coming out with their next aircraft, you guys, and that is going to be the Aerostar 600. Now, the Aerostar 600 was actually later purchased by Piper and became the Piper PA60. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal is, again, this is going to be their second AccuSim aircraft for Microsoft Flight Simulator. For those of you who don't know, the AccuSim is a highly detailed third-party operation that sort of runs in the background currently with the Comanche. It makes for an incredible flight experience. Everything from the performance of the aircraft to failures to startup procedures, incidents that could happen in the aircraft, turbulence, flight model. AccuSim is an incredible piece of software. Allows for a full walk around of the aircraft, everything from checking your fuel to your flaps to your bolts to your wheels. It really added a lot. It was a really huge deal when AccuSim came to Microsoft Flight Simulator. So now that A2A Simulations is bringing yet another aircraft in, you guys can see, very nostalgic, very old, sticking with their sort of their history of dealing with those older aircraft and bringing them to the simulator. Now this is going to be a twin engine aircraft, so that's going to be a nice difference from that to the Comanche. So this is going to be the first AccuSim twin engine aircraft brought to Microsoft Flight Simulator from A2A Simulations. I can't stress it enough, you guys. If you have not flown the A2A Comanche, if you have not purchased it yet and you like general aviation aircraft and you want something that is very high fidelity, very realistic, requires you to stay on the game and do things correctly, it is absolutely the aircraft for you. If you are someone who just sort of likes to hop in and just go off and tool around, it may not be something that you will particularly enjoy. Again, the flight model is usually very, very realistic. They can be quite challenging to fly. If you don't do things correctly, you can find yourselves in a less than favorable situation. One of the really cool things about the Comanche, for example, is that it also has a damage model. So, for example, if you do a prop strike on the ground, you're actually going to see the prop break. And it can do everything from bending to shattering. So it was definitely a milestone for Microsoft Flight Simulator in regard to what the AccuSim product line brought to the sim. So it really is a huge deal that they're bringing in another aircraft, much less a twin engine. I will definitely be staying on top of this one and definitely be picking this one up as soon. This will be a day one purchase for me. Anyway, stay tuned. A real quick update from Flying Iron Simulations, you guys. You're seeing it, you're looking at it. This looks like the G model, but of the B-17 Flying Fortress. Now, I wouldn't normally be one to say that these kind of aircraft are particularly enjoyable to fly in Microsoft Flight Simulator, not because they're bad aircraft or not welcomed here. This is something that personally I would much rather see in like DCS World, because I would actually like to do a bombing run with it. I think it'd be fun. But I will still absolutely pick this up. Flying Iron Simulations did an absolutely amazing job. One of my favorite aircraft in the simulator is the P-38 Lightning that was developed by Flying Iron Simulations. They did a wonderful job with it. Between the sounds and the performance and the overall flight model of the aircraft, and their price points are always dead on par and where they need to be. So the B-17 Flying Fortress, absolutely I will grab this. Like I said, this looks like a very late model of the aircraft. Looking at the chin gun there, I would guess either the G or above. I think the G was the first one to have the electronic turret there. Or is it electronic? I can't remember if it's an electronic firing system or hydraulic firing system, but anyway, doesn't matter. You guys get the point. It was no longer it was the first one to have a chin turret versus the two chin guns that used to be there. And if I remember correctly, the ball turret was also modified as well as the top turret. So this is definitely one of the latter versions of the B-17 that they've got going here, but I will still pick this up. Like, I know me, I will. Like, it'll be fun to fly. You know, we just sort of want to cruise around. I think where it would make this one a lot of fun is if you're doing like cinematic shots, doing like creating, for example, a simulated air show or something like that. It would be a lot of fun. And plus just learning, getting an idea. If they are able to maintain a highly realistic flight model with this, then that could make that even more challenging and definitely a big game changer as far as the enjoyment of flying it in the sim on a day-to-day. So we'll see. But I'll definitely be picking it up. The B-17, in my opinion, is probably the most aesthetically pleasing aircraft of World War II in its class. Okay, before anyone starts harping on me. In its class. If somebody ever asked me what is the most beautiful aircraft to ever fly in the skies, I don't think I could answer it, because it really comes down. It's sort of like when they ask you, what's the best fighter in the world? It's like, what is it doing? Are we talking about ground attack? Are we talking about multi-role? Are we talking about air-to-air? And so it's the same thing for me when they ask me, what's my favorite airplane in the world? What era? What is it doing? What are you talking about, fighters? Are we talking bombers? Are we talking cargo? You know, like, it's an impossible question in my opinion. It's an absolutely impossible question. But here, I'll pose that one to you guys. If you had to pick one aircraft of every aircraft that could ever exist in the world, past, present, etc., what would be the one aircraft that you would say is your favorite plane of all time? Comment down below. All right, my friends, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Microsoft News and Updates. I hope you guys are just as excited about the coming products as I am. Definitely a lot coming down the road for Microsoft Flight Simulator. I have a very awesome review coming of a force feedback yoke over the next day or two. It should be here today. Again, remember, I do have access to the Boeing 777, so you guys will see a video from me on that, as well as many other streamers and content creators. On Friday the 21st is when we are given the green light. So once the green light is given to us, you guys will see tons of content. I do have a guide for the 777 already in the works. And so my goal is to have that launched on Tuesday, June 25th. If I launch it a little bit earlier, I will let you guys know, of course, in case you guys wanted to study it before the actual release of the aircraft. But if you guys are interested in supporting that project, as well as the Duke will follow shortly behind the 777. I put the Duke on hold so I could focus on the 777. I figured the 777 was probably going to be a bit more demanded than a Duke guide, but the Duke guide is still almost done. It's just once I got news that the 777 was around the corner, I decided to shift gears. So anyways, as always, folks, stay safe and healthy, and I shall see you in the next one.